Hello, and welcome to another session of the Patura Seeds Pit Stop. I'm sitting here with a legend, a Manitoba legend, on a nutrient that never gets old talking about. Don Flaten, a new member, from what I understand, of the Cross organization.
Yes.
What's Cross?
It's a very, very elite organization of cranky, retired old soil scientists.
That makes sense. Especially considering that years ago I probably contributed to those components, the qualifications of that.
Exactly. So. You're one of the key contributors.
Yeah. I remember the red pen. But anyways, well, it's good. Thanks for joining us, John. What I want to talk about is we have a lot of customers that we always talk about phosphate management.
Right.
And one of the things that we've seen is the evolution of variable rates.
Right.
And so moving forward, as farmers adopt variable rate technologies, how do you see phosphate playing a role in variable rate technologies?
Yeah, good question. We see it in different roles depending on what people are interested in, but I think one of the most valuable roles is where you've got, let's say, low areas of the landscape which are more fertile and have a reserve of extra phosphate. There's no use adding phosphate fertilizer to those areas of your land, and there may be more benefit to adding additional phosphate over and above what you would normally add to some of the higher points in your landscape, which might have lower fertility levels. And so we've seen examples in Western Manitoba, for example, where we've seen substantial financial, agronomic, economic, and environmental benefits to applying phosphate on a variable rate basis, more on the upper parts of the landscape and less on the lower parts of the landscape. But that's in that situation. In another situation, like in the Red River Valley, it might be completely different.
Yeah, and you bring up a great point, talking about phosphate availability. Like, it's one thing to apply, but availability. Organic matter obviously has such a huge impact on that availability to the crop. How much could we follow variations in organic matter to anticipate availability of phosphate between depression and high landscapes?
I think that organic matter could be a very useful indicator of historical growth of 10,000 years since glaciation. The natural grassland grew better in these parts for good reasons, right? But the challenge with that is we've been farming that land for at least 100 years, and some weird things can happen. You can end up with areas of the landscape that have low organic matter because they're not very productive.
Right.
Like, let's talk about a sandy ridge. And if for the last 100 years, the farmers have been putting the same rate of phosphate fertilizer on that sandy ridge as on the more productive areas of the field, the sandy ridge may have a huge amount of leftover phosphorus from all those fertilizer applications. So the natural fertility and then what we might call the human-made fertility might look quite different after our historic fertilizer practices.
Sure. Yeah, I believe it. And on top of that, just to throw another component of variability, salinity.
Yes.
Everywhere in Manitoba there's salinity, some more than others. And I know at our farm on Patura Seeds, our saline areas, they've got a lot more phosphate for a lot less crop removal.
Exactly. And if you fertilize those the same as the rest of the field, you just make that phosphate surplus bigger and you're wasting your money. And especially in saline areas, it's important to learn when you've got to just cut back on your inputs for annual crops, and also consider maybe going to a perennial crop and just staying out of that with your annual crop system, because as you know, seed is expensive too.
That's
so
right.
Even without fertilizer, you're investing in a crop where it's not likely to produce a profitable yield.
Yeah, and key being economical, right? That's what it comes down to at the end of the day. We see variable rate continue to get adopted more and more. And the zones that are based are usually off parameters outside of phosphate parameters, as you mentioned. How can growers look at what factors affect phosphate zones moving forward?
If I were farming and setting up a variable rate phosphate program, one of the things that I'd want to know in setting up my zones is what are the factors that are limiting yield in various parts of the field. And if it's drainage or salinity or like a real sandy soil that doesn't hold water very well, then I want to know that, because there's no use adding a lot more fertilizer of any type, phosphorus included, to a soil that has those sorts of limitations unless you can address those limitations. So I don't like to see people jump into a zone-based variable rate program without making sure that they've got a good understanding of what factors in the soil are limiting crop yield. Then they know where fertilizer can maybe fit in, or maybe it's something else, like drainage or salinity control or something.
So what I'm hearing is back to the fundamentals.
Yes.
Fundamentals being key.
Yep.
Some things never change, right?
No.
You've been teaching that for years.
Decades.
Very good. Well, that's great. Thanks for your input on phosphate management. I know despite you not actively out there preaching your messages, it's still conversation. So, but before we let you go, we're not going to let you go that easy. We've got 3 rapid fire questions for you.
Right. Okay.
Rapid fire questions that we want to share with the audience.
Okay.
Are you ready for them?
Yep.
Quick answers. Can you do that?
Yep.
Okay. What are you, Don, most excited for in the future of the ag industry?
The bright young people that are going to and that are replacing old farts like me.
The cross members.
Yes.
Yeah, very good.
The people who are replacing the cross members.
That's
yes.
right. And number 2, machinery. They're getting bigger.
Yeah.
What color of machinery has caught your eye at Egg Days?
To be perfectly honest, and this is no lie, I'm colorblind. So that's my answer. I don't have a favorite color.
I hope you haven't shared that years after identifying different soil structures.
And this is in fact why I have to teach at the university, is because I can't do agronomy with my impediment, with my disability.
And third and final rapid fire question, in your position, what skill or attribute has made you successful in your career?
That is another good question. I personally think curiosity and listening are probably the characteristics that have been most helpful to me, even though I haven't always practiced them. I've sometimes spoken more than I've listened, but I've learned so much from other people, and that's a super important issue, I think.
Yeah, that's great. Curiosity and listening, and a little phosphate management. Lessons with Don Flaten. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Larry.